It's 5:30, so I'd like to call the Mayor's Neighborhood Safety Task Force meeting to order. And would you like to call the roll, Jolinda?
Chris Storr. Here. Mary Ann Downey. Here. Barbara Lewis. Samuel Johnson. Thomas Grimes. James Moreland.
Here.
Laurel Pressing.
Here.
John Rosca.
Here.
Teresa Michelson.
Here.
Kathy Wallet. Here. Norma Linton. Here. Esther Pack.
Here.
Clyde Walker. Dave Barr. And Jerry Morrow.
Okay, thank you all for coming. Let's add approval of the minutes to the agenda as item number 2. Has anyone had a chance to look at the minutes? And is there a motion?
I move
Any-
approval of the minutes.
Any additions or corrections? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Okay, public input. I have one person, Diane Marlin.
Thank you. My name's Diane Marlin. I represent Ward 7 on the Urbana City Council. I just wanted to give you an update on the January 12th meeting we had with owners and managers of properties on Vawter Street. And the turnout was remarkable. I think we had all the owners of properties on that street, including William Campo, the Snyder Management Company, the Verchotas, Green Street Realty, Campus Property Management, and I'm really, I'd like to recognize and thank them for coming. There was a fair amount of discussion about different approaches to improving security on the street. No real decisions were made at that meeting, but a couple of very positive developments. One, I think it was the first time that all of these owners and managers had actually been in the same room together at the same time, so it was a way for them to start opening channels of communication among the owners and start talking about ways to cooperate on security measures. And a lot of different ideas were thrown around. Also, representatives from the Urbana Police Department, Chief Connolly and Lieutenant Sanders, and then the Community Development Director, Libby Tyler, and several staff members were there. The other very good thing that came out of this, after the meeting, Jessica Wedig, who works with Snyder Property Management, decided to organize a cleanup in the 2000 block of Vawter, and she's already been in contact with Urbana Public Works and Community Development, has arranged for the necessary supplies, and so that's in the works. And that's a very simple, very straightforward way to start to get the neighborhood involved, including the residents on the street involved. So I'm looking forward to working with her on that. Anyway, this was a start, and it was just really gratifying to see all the owners and managers come out, and they are all very concerned about the area and expressed a willingness to work with the city.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you very much. All right, what we're doing, is there anyone else who would like to address the Urbana City Council? Okay, what we're doing is getting reports from you. If you've had a chance to discuss with your neighbors in your community group about hiring more police and how to pay for it, if people would even want to get into that. A lot of people don't think about that, but what kind of discussions did you have? Do you want to start, Chris?
I think I'm going to defer to Mary Ann.
Okay.
I
Huna.
believe Chris deferred to me because we had one of our third meetings that the neighborhood has put together since the shootings happened in our neighborhood. There was a fairly good turnout. We had about 25 people there. About a third of those folks were actually not residents, but were members of the High Center, which is right in our neighborhood and very much an active member of our neighborhood as a group. They sponsored this space for us. The discussion has been, in the last 2 meetings, the idea of discussing possibly a neighborhood watch group, establishing one. And after a lot of research and discussion over these 3 meetings, I think there was a consensus that rather than a formal watch group, they would like to do more connecting with each other's neighbors, both those nearby our homes, but also having more opportunities to connect with neighbors throughout the neighborhood. And so I think that's the theme that we will build on going forward. The group is set to meet again in about 2 weeks. So this will be an ongoing effort that I think could prove very positive for the neighborhood overall.
Did you discuss whether we need to hire more officers?
That did come up in the discussion, and it's a very mixed response to that. There, in many cases, I would say about a third of the folks seem to be very agreeable to that idea. They feel that the city is understaffed. Others talked about the idea of maybe having more social support around the police staffing in addition. And then there are others that really don't feel like they know enough about it to have an opinion. That was, in general, the way it was in that group.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to amplify something that Mary Ann touched on.
Is your microphone on?
Me?
Okay.
I'd like to amplify something that Mary Ann touched on with regard to more social support. Some of the members have expressed the idea that we really need to come together as a neighborhood and have events to kind of help people, help the neighbors get to know each other better. We see that as a deterrent and something that rather than have something that's fearful, have something that's very positive.
Okay. Would you like to say something?
In my neighborhood, they would like more, but they just don't know how to, I guess, how to pay for it, how to get the money for it. So I think they all for it in my neighborhood.
Okay. Well, we got the money this year for adding 2. The city council voted in the committee of the whole last night 6-1 to add 2 officers. We apparently had a limit of 5 going to the Police Training Institute, and we already had 3 officers already signed up. So I think the idea is to have 2 start training this spring, and then 3 more next year, and we'll figure out the financing for the 3 additional ones, but we felt we could afford 2 for just part of this year without having to add any taxes. But, okay, so the people in you would call yourself the Learman neighborhood?
Yes,
Okay. So nobody was opposed to the police, they just didn't,
didn't know how.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you want to comment on this, John?
I'm not a neighborhood group, so I don't have anything to report.
Okay. How about Suna?
Kathy, you go first, and then with the last person who sent something to us, I'll just summarize that.
Okay, I did send my comments to the entire group, so you've seen the feedback, which is mostly pro additional police. There's request for more social services. I'd be interested, uniform crime reporting, I don't believe includes a code specifically for mental illness response. I'd like to see if there's some way that UPD can break down, if someone is eventually arrested, it has to be a criminal code, a domestic battery abuse, something like that. So I don't think they can code anything specifically mental illness, but it would be interesting to know out of the calls that they respond to what really starts out as a mental illness, mental health situation and turns into a criminal situation.
Okay, that's why we have the crisis intervention training, and I think our department keeps track of that. Maybe
Okay.
that's not a classification that goes to the state.
Yeah,
But that's one of the reasons that we need more officers, because it takes more time.
Right, I understand that. One of the landlords in Suna would like to see working together with other landlords, and Diane talked about the landlord meeting, and that's encouraging. And they're worried about property values somewhat, especially around the Silver Vault area, and they would love for the city to buy the Platinum properties and demolish them.
Would they like to tell us how to get the money?
Well, the man owes us, what, $485,000, and the property's only valued at $100,000,
So
so
it
give him
kinda-
a clean slate.
Yeah, some of these things take a long time. Esther, did you want to say something?
Oh, I just wanted to say, well, first, as the mayor mentioned, and I don't know, I mean, she probably knows more than I, that I think if you want to zero in on the number of responses that involve a person with a mental health problem, probably you should look at the crisis intervention team data, and that would probably be it. But just to clarify, I'm not positive about this, but I'm pretty sure the police don't have any data of called about a mental health problem, because people don't call about a mental health problem. It's people. I'm just saying the offense will be where the numbers will be found are most likely under disorderly conduct or criminal trespass to property, and it's when I'm sure there are callers who say there's someone who won't leave, and I think they have a mental health problem. So the police probably have that information, but just in the crime data and when they're reporting what the call was, the call for service, what was about, just like, if you called about noise, they would say a noise complaint. I think that's what a lot of them fall under, are things like that
Right.
that are actual criminal offenses where an officer could arrest or could let a person go, and what they do is spend a lot of time trying to
Right.
help let the person go if the person will cooperate.
I understand
Yeah,
that under
okay.
UCR, they are required to give it a criminal offense if the person is taken into custody. So I'll check with Chief Conley
Totally,
about the
yeah.
crisis intervention team. I do read the media reports posted by the police department every day. So there's quite a few that start out as a mental subject and then have to turn into something else.
But does the report say that they were called for a mental health problem, or does it say they were called for an alleged criminal
You-
trespass or disturbing the peace?
You have to read the narrative.
Okay, all right,
METCAD won't, for the most part, dispatch a mental subject.
That's what I was getting at. I was saying that there
Right,
probably is
right.
something else that was reported
Right.
on the 911 call, so those numbers are in there. But crisis intervention team
Right.
would tell you when police were doing that. And
Sure.
I think that's the number
sure.
you want.
And it's
That's
usually
the thought.
addressed in the narrative. The officer will say, I was sent to check
Right.
on blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just add from Kathy's, a couple of other things? There were, I would say in general, yes, people were okay with adding more police officers, but they thought it was sort of strange that several people that they were being asked as individuals who had no notion of the city budget or staffing or whatever, like, really? That they just didn't feel like that was their job to decide where the money was going to come from. They really thought that was the job of the city. A couple of other comments. We talked last time, and people had gotten, when you say, like, not minutes of the meeting, but we had sort of conveyed what went on, this idea of the video surveillance cameras. And someone wondered, I understand they can't be mandatory. I think Lieutenant Sanders last time talked about why, but I'm wondering, with those remediation steps that landlords who have to do remediation because of excessive calls, seems like there was sort of a basket full of things that the landlord had to do in the past. One was, I know fencing has gone up, I know lighting has gone up. I just wonder if video surveillance, and maybe that is required of the apartments that have had, excessive calls.
Yes.
Okay.
We've had businesses that are required to have cameras, but
So, there was talk last time about the city sharing the cost of surveillance cameras with the apartment owners down on Varder. I think that's what we said, or I heard somebody say it might be possible. So it seems like that would be one step toward, again, sort of
That-
assisting the police,
yeah, well, that's what Lieutenant Sanders was talking about, that it's not, the city does not want to buy the cameras. If the owner needs to buy the cameras, they can, and some of them have. And some of them have been directed as part of a safety program to have cameras. We've done that. And when we gave you the whole list of properties that the police have dealt with, that's one of the things that is usually included, depending on the nature of the problem.
Right. And then someone mentioned the fact that, there's all the emphasis on the city, the police, the apartment owners, and this individual just thought the tenants kind of get left out in a lot of cases, and the suggestion would take a lot of police time, but the person wondered if, were the police ever able to meet with individuals at these troubled properties to explain to them what their rights were and so on. But I'm pretty sure that doesn't go on. I mean, I think that's Esther. Esther ends up being sort of the lone person out there in the wind. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so as I reported last month, everybody seemed to be enthused about in favor of the idea, except one person had budget concerns, but otherwise people didn't even think about the cost of it. But since I got the email, I've rounded up a couple of the people who like statistics, and they were shocked and chagrined at the ratios, the low numbers. But we were thinking that the population alone isn't the most salient detail, because we have a very transient population, and that would be a different issue with regard to safety than these cities, which maybe aren't college towns and have a more permanent residential base. So that is something that's not really reflected in this. But when I was reading, if I may address a couple of other things, when I was reading your list of resident concerns, I was reminded that over the years, in the last couple of years, people have waxed on about Joomers and why it is that Joomers is being, whatever it's being, maintained or paid for or whatever. And I don't know how to direct people's attention to the Joomer issue, but that has come up a number of times whenever money is talked about. And especially when there was the meeting regarding the possible renovation of the church, the former Baptist church on Reese and Illinois. Wow, the Joomers issue was a big one then. But I want to raise another issue. Oh, and I was going to ask you, Libby, before we started, about getting flyers. A couple of people have asked me for the brochures or leaflets that they had gotten in the past. And I'm just wondering when, since we have so many tenant properties in my area, how we could get those leaflets to everyone other than me Xeroxing them, which I'm not inclined to do.
What is the leaflet?
The leaflets that spell out the Urbana, how to get along in Urbana.
Welcome to the neighborhood.
Welcome to the neighborhood. Yeah, if we could, how one can avail oneself, because a lot of these people are not inclined to look it up online. They would just like to have that lovely leaflet in their hands, and so.
Yeah, we haven't printed them the last year or two because we went towards door hangers that have a website for Welcome New Resident with all the regulations. So there's like a door hanger that the university has been distributing around the campus area, and we cooperatively print those with the university, and it directs the incoming students to a website, which is really how the students, they seem to prefer their information. It doesn't mean that we couldn't also have some of the old-fashioned flyers printed for events or neighbors to hand out. We could look at that. I think it's a little bit out of date, but the approach has changed in the last few years towards a website. And there's now a landing page on our website that is for new residents with all those, welcome to Urbana, behave yourself. That's what we call it. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking of several of the rental properties around me which have houses, yes, that have multiple tenants. Like each one has a room. And so you put something on the doorknob and that doesn't get it to all of the residents, just, whoever happens to open the door at that time. But there were several people who like those and have asked about it for their tenants. So if you could, how can I
Maybe we could
get
get
a
you
pile
some.
of them?
Maybe we could get you some and you could distribute them if you want to tell us how many.
I hate to be in the distribution business, but
if you
since I
think-
brought it
if
up,
you
I
know-
should be
yeah.
willing to do that. Yeah.
Okay, Esther?
No, I'd be willing to help distribute them too, but I do think, I'm not sure what they're doing. It's been a few years since I was at the university, but one problem that we have when we talk about, quote, the students, besides the people just, they have this idea, the students aren't just the people who live in the residence halls in Orchard Downs. And I'm not sure, but when they do that door to door, I'm positive the last year they were doing it when I was at the university, they did not do any rental houses because they can't tell when they cross Lincoln Avenue which is rental and which isn't. They were doing apartment buildings, so they were getting a lot of people. But I think I don't mean to presume I know what you were saying, but my understanding, excuse me, though I'm here representing the tenant union, I live in West Urbana. I think two of the big things in the brochure, well, actually, the main thing in the brochure that was really good for giving to neighbors was the information about trash hauling.
Oh, yes.
Because there are so many people who come here from municipalities where it's. I've talked about this before. People put their trash, they move in, they put their trash on the curb, and they don't understand why no one came to pick it up because they think the city's picking it up, and they don't know they have to call a hauler to pick it up. And that was one of the things that was in this brochure that I thought was really good. And not necessarily that we need a brochure, just the door hanging, I'm sure was happening west of Lincoln. I'm not sure what they did east of Lincoln, but when they did it, they were doing apartment buildings, not houses. So if we could just if the city has this, if you can just dig it up and update it, I mean. And if you can print them and just give us copies, I think a lot of the homeowners in our neighborhood would be happy to get. And it's not like it has to be done right now, but for next fall, they'd be happy to go to the rental houses around their house to give them this thing that tells them about what day is trash pickup and what day is use. Because no one tells people stuff like that. I mean, people get so angry at their neighbors for not knowing these things. How in the world would someone know if no one tells them? And so. We'd love it if the city would pay to tell them by mail, but if not, could you at least give us the paperwork so we could do it?
Do you think we could do it
we do
through
pay
rental
quite a
registration?
bit for this service that's provided, and the understanding was rental properties, including the homes east of Lincoln, very large area. So we have been paying for that to happen every September, and so we'll look into the distribution. Doesn't mean that we can't supplement, but I don't think that relying on the neighborhood to distribute these when it really is a very big effort and can be pretty costly. We do this effort every fall. If we need to check again on how they're getting distributed specifically to these addresses, we'll definitely do that for next time. In the meanwhile, we can reprint some and fill in for those who didn't catch it the first time.
And also, I'd like to mention, I live in an apartment building 2 blocks east of Lincoln, and they don't do my building. So, just for example, so I'm not sure I can't remember when I last saw one of those. I'm sure since I retired from the university 5 years ago, my door has never been hung.
I think because yours is a condominium.
There's no way anyone could know that unless you guys printed out a list and excluded
we
them.
Prepared a list. Yeah. So
and you just
I think
excluded
that's why.
and you excluded the ones you knew were condo because we're on we pay a rental registration fee. We have a rental apartment in the basement of our co-op. So I'm just saying, I don't think we're the only ones you missed.
Yeah, I don't think we included that building.
Yes.
Well, for that matter, how would that tie in with rental registration? Don't you get information every time there's a new renter?
No.
No.
No, new when a landlord, if you start renting your house, they get
That's true. And a lot of the landlords do not inform the tenants of anything with regard to trash pickup. So that brings me to my last issue. There is a rat infestation in my neighborhood. It's in my house. Just caught 2 huge rats in the ceiling above my kitchen. I don't yet know how they're getting in, but I'm very, very well acquainted with the Anything Wild people. They couldn't be sweeter, nicer people. And I think my neighbors think I'm having an affair with this guy because he's over at my house at least once a week, getting the next trap, out. Okay. So he tells me, this is secondhand information, but he has told me that this is all over Urbana, that there are a lot of rats. So I'm thinking part of this could be the trash that I see houses right around me are not really, done well. There's open cans and stuff littered around the property. So isn't that a rat attractant? I'm really hot right now on this trash issue because I've got these very chubby rats in my house. So trash, how can we, as a city, better inform people and enforce trash? That's a simple thing, but it's pretty big, I'm thinking. The trash pickup.
We have a nuisance
but
inspector, and he will, if there's a problem, just call the city.
There's so many.
But I think part of this is just the basic education that when new people come in, they come from a city where the city picks up garbage. We don't do that, so they need to know what the local customs are. Yeah. So, but I want to answer your question about the Urbana Lincoln
Oh, okay.
or Jumers or whatever. That property is in negotiations for a developer who's done many historic restorations. They have good architects. So we're pretty close to getting that thing wrapped up, and we'll have a national hotel chain. So we'll be making an announcement about that fairly soon.
So it's no longer owned by the Chinese
No,
family?
Mr. XJ does own it, but he's selling it to someone who specializes in the redevelopment of historic hotels.
Okay,
In
so-
college towns especially, and these people have done very good work in other parts of the country. So, yes, that has been worked on for quite a while, and I think it's going to be a really good boost
Do you have a
to-
rough time frame there?
in the next few months.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that the same outfit that was going to do the Baptist Church,
No.
perchance?
No, this is a
Okay.
national company.
Okay, good, thanks.
Esther.
Get our former money out as well.
Why don't you tell people that?
Well, we did.
Yeah.
We got our $1 million back because
Wow.
XJ did not complete the project as agreed upon, so he paid us the $1 million back. So that's important. So Esther, do you want to?
Yeah, I'm not representing Muna, but I do live in the neighborhood, and we were dealing with another issue this last week. But I did just send an email to the list, and 8 people responded back on this question of the police. And just like with everybody else, 3 people said yes, they thought we needed more police before, because the whole thing we talked about before, that a lot of people think our police department is understaffed. And 4 people said yes, but it depends on the money, or they don't know about the money, or how can they make the decision themselves, et cetera. And really, I was just asking
Well,
perception.
I don't
yeah.
think
I know.
most people would be concerned about the budget. That's our job. But
Yeah.
since people complained about some of the suggestions,
Right.
do they have a better idea?
No. I mean, no, it wasn't a complaint. It was there were 4 thoughtful, this, that, weighing. I mean, I think it was some of the ones that you were mentioning. You got 2 were, but there were 3 people whose response was yes, Urbana doesn't have enough police. Though the main reason I'm mentioning all this is because I am from the tenant union. There was one person, not me, who wrote back saying, I don't really know about police, but we need another housing inspector. And I told her I would mention that at the meeting. I say that too, but this was someone other than me said it, so I just wanted to mention that.
Okay, I think we have hired a new housing inspector.
Right. Yeah. It's the more. Like, people think we need more police, we need more housing inspectors. If you gave them a list of other positions, they'd probably say we need more of those too, because we need more of everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the council will be voting on adding the 2 new officers, first meeting in February. Is there anything that people in this group would like to know about that we could talk about at the next meeting? If you can't think of something right now, you can certainly send me an email, and we'll get you the information on the crisis intervention, certainly.
Okay.
But anything else that you want to talk about that we should be considering?
Well, I would just like some kind of a follow-up, if there is one, from Diane and the landlords. Are there, especially given the fact that another landlord in Soon has suggested it was beneficial, if there are plans to continue this, or their regular meetings, are they as needed? Who is spearheading this? Is it community development? What's
Yeah,
happening?
if they want to meet, they could certainly meet at the city building, if they want to meet on a regular basis. Libby, did you want to talk about that?
Kathy, are you asking about the person in Willard, around the Willard area, that said that they would
Well,
like to get
she suggested it, but since Diane did do a report of the meeting of, it was pretty much Silverwater and Aspen Court area,
Yeah, there were,
just Water.
it was a really good turnout, kind of surprised us, and we're sharing the sign-up information. There's some things that they were definitely talking to each other about, helping each other, sharing security, for example, was one. Helping each other on working with tenants, and a really great example would be if they're going to add security to one complex and there's one just adjacent, they can share the cost. So we knew some were talking about that. And so we passed around a listserv. There was some information that they requested be provided to them, and a little more contact information from police, which we were able to get. It was very illuminating, and they're very busy people. I think they felt like we're being brought to the city. What did we do wrong? And no, this is something, we want to try to help if we can. And I do think it was worth their time because they got to network and talk with each other, and it was a healthy exchange of ideas. So we'll provide the venue if they want to keep working together, but I think a lot was accomplished just because they were there. And I don't know if Diane mentioned this, but one of the people there from Snyder Management right away said, I want to do something positive for the neighborhood, so she's organizing a cleanup and is working with Public Works to get that going. And I don't know if we have a date yet on that, but that's a very positive outcome.
Right. I guess what I'm looking for at the next meeting, whatever drove the first meeting, will this continue? Do you see this as a one-time thing? I don't need an answer tonight because you probably don't have those answers tonight. But maybe by the next meeting, if there's been more feedback about continuing, those kinds of things.
Yeah, there's a couple different options. One thing we talked about with police was they used to do these nice lunchtime events, but it was really hard to get people to come out. So, the question is making the time. Again, everybody's really busy, and, maybe there is a more regular meeting that we could try a different type of time or venue. But it did seem that that group really did need to meet and did need an audience, so we learned from that. So we'll think about what to do. We'll talk with police
Well,
too.
we could survey the people that came and see what they would like to do also.
Great idea.
And on your question about the rats,
Can I just ask Libby a question while
Sure,
she's
go
still here
ahead.
about this? So do I understand that was a community development initiated meeting to get these landlords together? That was community development?
This was in response to a request by at least one property owner, maybe multiple, on the question of security cameras. And we did have some discussion about that, but as we've learned here, and Joel Sanders was there as well as Chief Connolly, it's a little more complicated than that because of the access to the information. They're very expensive. We had one individual who, at their own expense, have installed the cameras, and that's, you're going to give grants to somebody else? And then, I think they really didn't want to be mandated to have cameras. How they would place them, there's complications with putting them in the right-of-way. We don't have the infrastructure. It would be very costly to put cameras in the right-of-way and then have the infrastructure to monitor, and then we're not policing. City police aren't policing, they're watching the video. So it's turned into a much more complicated question, but it was initiated because Councilmember Marlin was getting requests for assistance with cameras. So that's why we had the meeting.
Okay.
Diane would know more about how it started. So.
A couple other things I just remembered. One of the topics that actually we spent a lot of time talking about was how to enforce no trespassing orders on a property. And there turned out there was a great deal of confusion among the owners who to call, how to do it, and they weren't also getting quite clear communication from the police on the whole procedure. So that's one thing that Lieutenant Sanders is going to follow up with all the owners on, is just what the procedures are for no trespassing, because as we find on a lot of these properties, it's and we see that in Aspen Court too, it's people coming from other places and hanging out where they shouldn't be on these properties and causing problems. So the no trespassing topic was something that they really needed more clarification on. And just flew out of my mind. Oh,
Too
well.
many meetings.
Too many
Talked
meetings.
about a lot of different things.
But that was a
Okay.
big one.
Thank you.
Shared, we learned something for sure. They shared a lot of information. I think it is not easy to manage these properties, to run these properties. I do think there's more vacancies than there used to be, and it's not an easy business. And I really feel like the people who came to the meeting are working really hard and trying their best. That was the impression that I got at the meeting, and
Yeah.
I think you would probably agree.
I mean, it was the, it was the uptick in gun violence that really got them at the table, I think, because everyone is very concerned about that. So they're ready to address the issue.
So Diane, did you get the impression that they were interested in meeting again, or did you think this meeting kind of satisfied their
I think they would meet again if we had a specific
topic?
and plan and a direction forward. The neighborhood cleanup is a good first step, and we certainly can communicate with them and ask them to let their tenants know it's going to happen and get them involved in that. So I think that's a good thing. And that goes to building community and getting to know neighbors, stuff like that.
It's always helpful to talk to the people in the same business. That's what people like to do at the Urbana Business Association. So I think you learn a lot. I wanted to go back to the rat question. We banned free-ranging cats a while back. So I don't know if this, the city council passed an ordinance, so I wonder if that's part of the problem. So anyway, we'll see. We'll check into that and see what the issues are in cities. I've heard that when you get rid of cats, keep them inside, you protect birds, but you also get more rodents.
Yeah. Someone was just commiserating and saying that there are no more cats in cat shelters in Chicago because of the rat problem. Everybody's getting cats, and I should get some cats. But I don't think that's my.
You don't have to get a cat if your neighbors get cats.
Yeah. So I would like to talk about how to put more pressure on the landlords. And so I shouldn't name names, but back when this committee started, I was already talking to Weiner about some of his properties, which have these trash issues. And he said, talk to so-and-so. I've gone through 2 generations of representatives from that company, because I don't know if he still owns it. And I talked to them about it, and I state the problem, and they never, ever act on it. And it seems to me that would be the first step before going to Jason, would be to talk to the people. But he owns that outfit owns so many properties, and if they alone could address the trash issue, that would be a big bite out of it right there.
Well, I think if you talk to them and they don't respond, you should call Jason, because the city does want clean streets and sidewalks.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would you like to talk about next time?
Rats and trash.
Oh, you want to say something? Let's.
Yes,
go ahead.
for me, I would like to talk next time about Aspen Court, where there's a stand by Aspen Court.
We could talk about that right now. Is Libby still here? No, she left. Okay. Next time we could talk about Aspen Court. Do you want to talk about Aspen Court, John? Where we are?
I'm not. I haven't been involved in that project to the extent that Libby has been since I've been building safety and city grants.
Okay. Okay. So we have Tommy Askins wants to talk about Aspen Court. Unleash dogs. I wonder if the dogs could deal with the rats.
Yeah, well, my name is Tommy Askins. I've been in Aspen Court for almost 11 years right now.
Okay.
Well, I have the rules that we be issued out every year, and last couple of days or so, the pit bull's been running wild over there.
Pit bulls?
Yes, ma'am. At first, the guys used to have more, have more leashes, but now they're just running around. And a couple of days ago, a lady had a little terrier. A pit bull killed the dog, but so far we don't know who the dog was for. But we've been complaining about that for a while now.
Did you call the police?
No, I didn't. I didn't witness it happen.
Okay, but did the person call the police? Do you think when your dog got killed?
I don't know. I know it was reported to management.
Okay.
So, but
because that's a danger to other people. So
yes,
somebody should have called 911.
I mean, I didn't witness it. I didn't know.
Okay.
I know it happened.
Okay.
But it's these guys. They just comes over there and with their dogs. I mean, I think maybe one person over there have a pit bull, but they're not allowed over there. So we have problem with the dogs. They run around, they be in your yard, you know. You know how the guys say, the dog, he's not going to do you anything. But we don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
And we was discussing this today, me and Miss Robin was, about these dogs, they're going to attack one of those kids. And, you know, dog think the kid's playing, but the kids, they're just scared of the dog. But like we was talking about the guys just hanging out, that's the main problem we have over there. They don't have nothing to do, anything to do, but come over there in the morning, start hanging out, and we just in the house. I mean, if any one of you was to come in Aspen Court, all the people you see, they don't stay there. You might see me, because I'm always on the streets, just trying to just talk to the neighbors that stay there and asking them, do they really want to let these guys just take your neighborhood? Which they have. They done took the neighborhood. We pay to stay in the house, which everybody do. And I don't I don't think that's fair. But
Well,
these guys, you know, they looking for trouble. I mean, if you walk by them, they sort of looking at you like they looking for trouble.
Sort of like, how dare you say anything?
Yes, yes.
Oh.
When Miss Marlin was there last Friday, these guys, they was, you know, I heard all the talking, but I stay there.
So
Well, yeah,
people
that-
might be afraid to turn them in
Yes,
also, right?
yes.
Because they seem like there would be some retaliation.
Yeah, and you know, it have bunches of them. I mean, they'll go get their friends, and you know, they don't have no communication with us, the people who stay there. They go to certain spots, and that's where they'll be all day, every day. And then they'll
Well,
walk-
that property is going to be redeveloped, so we have that project in the works, and we've done a lot of redevelopment of properties as they deteriorate. It comes to the attention of the city, and then the police department and the community development department get together and get a plan. So that is going to be changing.
But what is this man supposed to do
Yeah,
while
Call
they're waiting for this property to
yes.
We're just gonna
redevelop?
run this like a regular meeting.
Okay.
And
Well,
get a call
police-
done. Thank you.
police-
If you're concerned about anything, you should call 911.
yes, well,
And the
police-
Urbana police will come out and help.
Yeah, well, I was gonna comment on Chief Conley, because he comes by my house. He, you know, he say he come check on me. So sometimes I don't be there, but I talked to him last night, and you know, we just sort of looking out for the kids or whatever. Because
Yes.
these I just hope that those kids don't get hurt over there, because these guys, they don't care. They just looking for somewhere to be, and God knows I don't want to see none of those kids get hurt.
Mhm.
So, you know,
Mayor,
Okay.
could I ask the gentleman a question,
Sure.
please? What is your response from Green Street when you call?
well, usually I go to the manager's office and talk to Miss Bett, and she'll, well, most of the time she'll say, well, you know how those people is. I mean, I don't understand. That's not no solution to me knowing how
So
they is.
they're
So-
not at all helpful.
Yes, I mean, she won't tell them anything. Right now, what they do, they'll have cars, broke cars towed back there. And they'll call in daily shade tree mechanics to come work on them anywhere. They'll park them anywhere. We don't, you know, like if I pay to stay here, that's not for me. Miss Better tell them that. She say, that's not your property. I mean, I know it's not, but I pay to stay here, and I don't think you should just be able to pull up in front of my place and do anything you want. But Miss Bet give them the right to
We
do that.
agree with you, sir.
Yeah, she gives them the right to do that.
Well,
And-
we will be redeveloping that property, and I think it's going to be transformed. So it's not that the city doesn't know about the issues. We are working with a new owner.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you,
So we
ma'am.
could talk about what exactly is going on at Aspen Court next time. John, did you want to say something?
Well, there's a couple of things. Kind of maybe an update at where we are. The police department, the owners work with the police department to block off the south end because to reduce the circulation of people being able to just drive through there and drive out the other way.
Mm-hmm.
And we're working on constricting that area so that there's not as much circulation and reduce the traffic that goes through there. With respect to, I mean, we have a animal control officer. Somebody can call that, I think the number is 333-8911, and I think it's a non-emergency, and they can get the animal control officer
But they
out
could
there.
call 911 also.
Correct. And then the other thing, just briefly, what I do know about the redevelopment, the potential developer, I think they're in the process, my understanding is they have a contractor. They may have a contractor. They're in the process of what's called due diligence, where they're trying to acquire tax credits. And I'm not sure whether they're low-income housing tax credits or market rate tax credits, but anytime you a project or a property like this has to be redeveloped, it takes a significant influx of cash. And the way that typically a development is accomplished is using tax credits. So in the tax credit market, my understanding is it's soft because of people don't know what's going to happen with tax credits in the next 5 or 10 years. So that might have an impact on that as well.
Okay,
So.
thank you. Esther?
I don't want to make it sound like this is simple, but if you want another topic, there's a recurring theme, whether it's the dogs running or the trash or noise, that people, so many people are bothered by these things, and so few of the people who are bothered will call anyone. I mean, they'll complain to their neighbors, they'll complain if they come to me, they'll complain if you ask, but as far as picking up the phone and calling to say there's dogs running and no one's watching them, or there's trash at such and such, and I don't know quite what people's hesitation is. I mean, some of it I think is like what I find with tenants, where the hallway lights are out and everybody just assumes somebody else. Well, all these people live in the building, someone else will call, and I don't know if that's the case with these things too, where people think someone should call and they never think it's supposed to be them, and I don't know what the answer is, but we need a little bit more of a campaign of this. I mean, very upset, distressed people. Still, I don't know. I think they're
Well,
afraid.
maybe
I think it might be. This I thought just when you said about 911. I think it's because people think, is this serious enough for me to bother the police with 911? And if not, it's like they don't have any other idea. They have no idea that there's someplace else you can call. And so maybe a little, I don't know how, but maybe even public service announcements, a little more publicity about how non-emergency police service, or about nuisance, because that seems to be a big part of the problem is the stuff goes on because no one reports it. And the city just does not have the personnel to drive up and down every street every day to see where's there trash or where dogs are running.
Well, this could be in the brochure about what you do when you're living in Urbana. We could say if there's dogs running at large, what you do and who you call. So I think if there's a problem at that property, one of the things would be to give the people the information and encourage them to call.
Yeah, exactly. Like at Aspen Court. It's
Yeah.
just another flyer to tell them who to call.
We need a flyer for
Code violations.
your neighborhood and Aspen Court. Maybe all of them. Yes, Teresa.
Just say one thing. I am religious about calling, and I know what you mean. And when we have our annual meetings, we tell people over and over again, the city doesn't have the staff to drive around and see these problems. You must call. And it's easy to email Jason. I think there's a huge difference between that and what this gentleman is talking about. We have had this discussion about the apartments on Vawter Street and why we can't get neighborhood watches. One is transiency, but the other is because people are afraid in many cases of retaliation. It's not just, oh, I'm going to call 911 on these bad dudes. Are you kidding me? They will come in and kick your door down. I mean, we have no idea of what this gentleman is talking about. I have none. But I know it is not the same situation as calling in trash or a couch or grass that is long. I think it's, I'm not going to say insulting, but there's just no comparison for being afraid of some really big dudes who could sick their dogs on you when they find out you were the one, because they're going to come around and ask. I think it's simplistic to say, oh, call 911. Oh, call the animal control. No.
So what would you
can I suggest
what
something?
would I say? I don't know. I don't know if I think Chief Conley, I think they need to go over maybe a number of policemen and have a meeting with tenants there. I mean, maybe it's not even safe for the dog person to go over by herself if there are 4 or 5 guys around with dogs that are acting like that. Would you send an animal control person into that situation? I don't know. I think it needs to be thought about. I can't give you a solution right now, but I would be willing to sit down with somebody. I think we all ought to go over and take a bus trip and see what Aspen Court looks like. That's what I
Well,
think.
we understand that Aspen Court needs to be torn down and redone, and that's what's going to happen, but we can't do it instantly. We are working on it. Yes,
Can I
Esther.
suggest something? I've been to Aspen Court many times and been in the homes of people there, and I think I can't speak for the animal control officer, but I think if the animal control officer goes to any place in response to whether it's vicious dog or dog at large or whatever, and it looks like a dangerous situation, that, I mean, I don't think we have to worry about sending an animal control officer there, but Teresa's right about a lot of people. I usually hear this at tenant union about people witnessing what they believe to be drug dealing in parking lots, and this is not limited to Aspen Court. There are people who don't call the police because they are afraid that the people find out. And I've brought this up before when I was in city council. I brought this up. If the police went out there to have a meeting, the people who are afraid might not go to the meeting. So what people want, they want to be able to talk to the police in some way that they know. They need the confidence that the bad guys will never know they're the ones who called. Like when you call the police about a neighbor problem, and then they ask, would you like an officer to come to your door? No, those are the ones where people say no. And a lot of people are afraid to call because they think the officer will come to their door. And so I think communication, and I'm not just talking about Aspen Court now, I'm talking Champaign and Urbana. I mean, this is why in Rantoul, this is a common problem that people they're afraid that the police, the folks, the criminals listen to the police scanners, and they'll know, and that somehow what will come across will be person in number 23 said that the people in 42 are drug dealing or something. So I think what's needed is communication to the public, which is hard to do to the whole public, but if you have these specific places, I mean, it would start with, it'd be nice if there were a flyer, and that you mailed it by U.S. mail so that, people didn't, the cop wasn't coming to someone's door, that told people how if you want to report if you're aware of criminal activity but you're afraid, what you can do, and not just tell them don't worry about it, but
That
tell them
keep
what
it
they can
confidential.
do to keep it confidential. They need to specifically know, how do I report this and keep it confidential? And even if the truth is it is confidential, telling them a process makes people more confident that you really mean it, because Teresa's right, that is what people are afraid of.
Okay. Yes, would you like to say?
Yeah, 2 things. Calling the police by confidentiality. I called the police one time, told the person, do not send a cop to my door. And before you know it, there was the cop. And I just told, do not send a cop to my door. So sometimes that does not work, I'm sorry to say. 2, I think people are afraid to call, but sometimes people call and they do it for a while, then nothing, something happens then, but it goes right back where it started, back at the beginning. And I think people get tired of calling about the same problem, or, and it keeps just doing over and over. There's no solution. It's like going crazy because you're doing the same thing over and over and over. And I think that's one reason why. It ain't because they don't want to call, because they fear, well, they ain't gonna do nothing. They keep doing the same thing. They come, the police siren comes, they scatter. Then when they go, they come back. So I think it's a lot like that to me, because I live in that neighborhood, and I call police sometimes. Sometimes I don't, because I know it's gonna be the same old thing. The sirens gonna run, then they go run, then they come back after they leave. And I understand they need the sirens, but sometimes I wish they didn't have no sirens so they catch these people. Because to me, if you run the sirens, that's a warning. They coming.
Well, I'll talk to the police chief about this issue, how you deal with it and keep it confidential. But we need to remember that we have transformed a number of problem properties, and the police department provided you with a complete list over the last few years. So we do deal with them, but as I said, this kind of a problem requires just a new management and just starting over again, and that's what our plan is for Aspen Court. And we've been working on it for a long time, but sometimes people think the city can just instantly solve a property problem, but we have to deal with the laws. Property owners have rights, and we have to go through the courts sometimes, but Aspen Court is definitely right there at the top, and we're dealing with it. So next time, would you like to talk about Aspen Court rats? And we'll come with a brochure and how to report and keep it confidential. Yes, Norma?
Can I say another word or two about the rat?
Sure.
I should broaden the statement. I was being selfish because I have the rat problem, but I have also, I live on a corner with a lot of cars, and I have so much wildlife around my house. The raccoons at night, the possums at night. And the trapper guy is retiring, the younger, in the spring, which leaves the elder, and that's a very sparse trapping potential there. And he's got raccoons and squirrels and basements and attics. I feel sometimes like, there's a new streaming series called Zoo where the animals turn, and I feel like they're turning because according to him and according to me, they're coming in, and I don't know, if it's not the trash, what is drawing them. But as he tells me, gray squirrels are not on the endangered species list. We could get rid of a lot of gray squirrels, raccoons, possums, or dislocate them, relocate them, somehow, reduce the critters.
Once upon a time, we had a turkey problem, but
yes,
we solved that
remember
one.
the turkey problem. And if I lived over by Carl Park or Crystal Lake Park and had to deal with those geese, I'd be beside myself. But yeah, I think the trash is a big, big, big issue
Okay.
here.
We'll talk about trash, too.
Okay,
Okay, yes, go ahead.
In SUNA, we prepared a quick call sheet. It's not a brochure, it's just clean and neat, down and dirty. Here, if you have this problem, here's the number. It's
You want to send that to us electronically?
one nice little piece of paper. I'll be happy to send it to anybody who wants it.
Well, go ahead and send it to me, and maybe we can get
Okay.
it to Aspen Court. But we need to talk about their issue of keeping it confidential.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
Norma?
I would like to talk more broadly about response on the telephone, because I've had I call a lot with noise complaints, and it's very daunting the way the particular person asks you. And I've got a couple of international folks in my neighborhood, and they're terrified even to deal with police, but they don't quite get what they're being,
Do they,
asked.
they don't like the way 911 dispatchers?
No, the
or-
non-emergency number, when you want to have a noise
Oh, the
complaint.
non-emergency number, okay.
It's the exact same people.
Yeah, well, in any case, there's a man whose voice I recognized over the years, who's been there for a long time, but he lacks a little bit of bedside manner, I would say.
Teresa?
So what is it we'd be talking about in regard to Aspen Court? I mean, since
What
it's
the
going to...
city is doing and where we are in terms of getting a new owner. So you'll have some kind of perspective on what we do and where we are on it. Okay. Anyone else want to say something? Yes.
This issue about calling 911 or calling the police for help came up in this group that we recently met in our neighborhood. And many people expressed reticence to call 911. Gee, is this really worth that, or is this too much to call? No one said anything about fear, but I suspect that might be a situation as well. I know that I personally called the police department and did not use 911 because we had a chronic street crime issue that I was witnessing in my street. And it was handled very discreetly with an undercover police effort. And I was only spoken to on the phone with my cell phone. So I felt perfectly safe to give the information that was needed.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem was solved pretty quickly. And so I know it can happen well and be executed well, but maybe we need to talk about how do we get that communication initiated.
Well, I think there's difference if it's one person versus a gang that kind of hangs around some property. It might be harder in that case, that people would be more intimidated to call. But
That's
any-
why I was intimidated to call, because this was a similar situation. but
Okay.
It was handled very discreetly and properly, and solutions were there. I don't think everybody knows which number to call in which case, or how to.
Well, we will
initiate that.
find out.
That would be helpful for our group.
Okay. All right. We're at about 6:30. Anyone have any last comments? Okay. Do you want to meet on February 21st? 5:30 to 6:30? We'll keep it to 1 hour. And I thank you all for coming and for your comments. Okay. We'll adjourn the meeting since there is no further business that we can deal with at this point. Thank you.